Hey, welcome to the Alt Shift X Westworld Season 3 Episode 5 Q&A. We're talking about the new episode, Decoherence. We're going to figure out what happened, and we're going to figure out what it meant. Welcome all. Chard Loris? Oh boy, that's a bit on the nose, isn't it? That was crazy. She got blown up at the end, and I'm not even sure if I can, show the visuals. I think that might have been too real for YouTube. Because that was intense. Charlotte's family got murdered and destroyed, and it doesn't necessarily make sense that Charlotte survived and crawled out. Because remember back in season 1, episode 9, when Maeve got burned to death, and that destroyed both Maeve and Hector. And that was just a fire. In this episode, that was a full on super duper explosion that flipped a jeep. And Charlotte just crawled out like it was no big deal. So they've always been inconsistent with what kills hosts. They've always been inconsistent with does shooting them kill them, does burning them kill them, whatever. The point is that Charlotte has been deprived of her family, which is what connected her to this new identity she was building as Charlotte Hale. And the death of her family, I guess, pushes her in a different direction. Will this return her to being a bit more like Dolores, or will this just make her an even more furious kind of a new Charlotte Hale type person? But as soon as the family died, I was like, well, of course, because it was always hard to imagine Charlotte surviving with her family and getting a happily ever after. As Serac said in an earlier episode, there is no future in which the humans and the hosts can live alongside each other, apparently. So it seems natural that Charlotte's family kind of had to die, if not Charlotte herself. But it's sad. I do like, though, the idea that we see this guy after the explosion, who apparently was responsible for the death of Charlotte's family. I do like the idea of maybe that person, I think we're meant to assume that person was hired by Serac to kill Charlotte and Charlotte's family, but maybe that person was actually hired by Dolores. Maybe Dolores wanted to kill Charlotte's family because Dolores doesn't like that Charlotte is becoming more like Charlotte and less like Dolores. So there might be increased conflict between the Dolori, which could be fun. Another thing that I really liked was that Serac was not so much of a chump this episode. The problem with Serac is that he's this all-powerful, godlike guy who knows everything, controls everything, and yet he totally gets played by the hosts over and over. He seems to rule the world, and yet Dolores and Maeve, mostly Dolores, is getting away with all sorts of shit under his watch. I like how Serac actually had some counterplays this episode, because he identified that Charlotte was the host. He figured it out finally. And then when Charlotte tried to kill him, he revealed that he was a hologram throughout that entire meeting. So he actually had some plays. He actually had some moves to make this episode, which I thought was important, because for him to be scary, for him to be taken seriously as an adversary, I think he needs to actually use some of this badassness that he's got. Another one of the interesting bits was when Dolores, Maeve spoke to Dolores inside this simulated war world, simulated space, and something that is not obvious is that we see that it's Martin Connells's brain that's plugged into this simulation. So if you remember, the Scottish fellow Martin, so he was blown up last episode. He supposedly died, but his brain was recovered. Apparently it wasn't totally destroyed in this explosion, and that's the brain that was plugged into Serac's simulation. So presumably this Dolores that we're seeing is Martin Loris. So it's interesting that we see, that same character in Dolores form instead of Martin form. And I suppose we can wonder, what are the differences between Martin Loris's personality versus Dolores's personality? Thanks for the super chat from Death Cooker, who says, does anyone else want Serac to win? That's the thing, Serac has, fairly good motivations for a supervillain, you know? Like, he's said over and over that he wants humanity to survive. That's what he's motivated by. Like, and when we got his, like, childhood backstory, you know, having seen his entire home destroyed in front of him, it's very understandable that he'd be very focused on, like, trying to prevent disaster. Trying to get control is something that a lot of people feel after they lose control and suffer tragedy. So in a lot of ways, Serac is like a fairly sympathetic character. It's just that there keep being these moments that remind us that, oh, you know, he is actually a cold, pretty horrible person. Like when he just murders Liam Dempsey Sr. with his bare hands, and you know, and when he murders Jang, and when he murders like he's a killer. There's like the fact that he chooses to kill Dempsey with his bare hands shows that, you know, I think he wants to do it. He kind of enjoys doing it personally, because he could have had Liam Dempsey killed indirectly, right? But he chose not to. So I don't know. But I think Serac is a good villain. Serac is a good villain because you can have different opinions on him. Like, some people hate Serac, some people like him, some people find him sympathetic. And it's the same with Dolores and Maeve. I think in this scene, Dolores is saying that, well, I'm not a villain, but I'm not a hero. And Maeve is not a villain or a hero. You can take different sides with different people. It's not good or evil. So I really enjoy that. Thanks for the super chat from Andrew Schwartz and from Joey, who says, it's pretty cool to see a show build up a character for 2 seasons and then split that character into 5 different arcs. Yeah, it's like seeing, like, different possibilities, different futures, different directions that Dolores could go in. Because, like, Charlotte is a more human direction for Dolores to go in terms of, like, embracing her family and stuff. Whereas, like, Dolores Prime, Dolores is more of a purely host survival focused character. Martin Loris was a more sort of, you know, obedient lackey sort of a character, I suppose. Someone who didn't deviate from his programming. And it remains to be seen what the next Dolores will be like. Have any of you guys seen Orphan Black? I won't spoil anything, but Orphan Black has one actress playing a bunch of different sort of versions of a similar character, and it's kind of similar to what, like, all the Doloreses are doing, is a bit like the characters in Orphan Black. So, okay, what else happened in this episode? So, we started with Maeve in heaven. Oh, so yeah, one of the other things that happened is that they actually called this place the Sublime in the episode. So this is like the Windows XP robot heaven that Maeve uploaded the hosts to in Season 2. They've finally actually called it the Sublime in episode. Previously, that was just a term that Lisa Joy used. And I'm glad they did use the term Sublime, because I've been using the term Sublime in all my videos, and I was sort of feeling like an idiot using that term since it hadn't actually been used in canon now, and I'm glad that it has been cleared up that this is called the Sublime in canon. Because, like, some people were calling it, like, the Valley Beyond, some people were calling it, like, it was really confusing. Thanks for the super chat from Ryan, who says, why do you think Dolores crushed Hector's pearl instead of Maeve's? Do you think this was intentional? I think that she wasn't sure whose pearl it was. I think she thought she might have been destroying Maeve's pearl, because, like, she just looked a little sort of puzzled, like she had sort of a weird expression on her face when she was doing this. So I think she was, like, trying to destroy Maeve, but she ended up destroying Hector. But I'm sure she's happy to kill Hector as well, given that Hector is Maeve's ally and she knows that Maeve is trying to kill her. So I think it makes as much sense as anything for her to do that. And, you know, I liked the tone of this whole conversation where, like, Dolores and Maeve are enemies, but they were sad about the fact that they were enemies. Because ultimately their motivations and their interests are different. Because Dolores is primarily focused on her own survival and the survival of the host species, whereas Maeve is really sort of specifically focused on protecting her daughter in the Sublime. Dolores is not interested in the Sublime, whereas Maeve is more so. So I think that's why they're enemies, but they're still sad that they have to be enemies. But yeah, R.I.P. Hector. Thanks for the super chat from Knowledge, who says 2 parts. 1, thoughts on Jean-Mi being Ford, i.e. Solomon/Rehoboam, allowing Ford to get as far that he could exact revenge on Serac / prevent What are you saying? Um, I think you're asking about like what's the relationship between like Jean-Mi and Rehoboam and Ford, because there's like it's sort of ambiguous to what extent Ford was being watched by Serac. Because Serac at one point said that he knew for a long time. He had been expecting and waiting for Dolores and Maeve to emerge. I think he said that in the garden here, and I think he said that in the bar in Singapore. So it sort of seemed as though Serac might have been watching, influencing, allowing Ford and Westworld to do what they were doing. However, he also seemed surprised to find out that the Forge existed in Westworld with all this human data. Like he says, like, oh, imagine my surprise when they had a complete portrait of the human mind in a theme park. And also, like, his surveillance can't be all that comprehensive, given that, like, Dolores and Maeve managed to, like, cause as much chaos to him as they have. So it's ambiguous to what extent Serac was aware of and allowing Ford and Westworld and stuff to go ahead. I tend to think that his control was like lesser rather than greater. But yeah, it's still ambiguous, and I'd like to find out more. Thanks, Birdbrain, who talks about how Connells was more authoritarian. And thanks to TJ Jones, who says, can we talk about what made Mental Hospital William totally snap? Well, yeah, like at one point, like the whole William Asylum story. He had this great like therapy session where he was like talking to all the past versions of himself, which I thought was reminiscent of Dolores talking to a past version of herself in season 1. This is how Dolores, I mean, this is the center of the maze. Like in season 1, the maze was about the journey of the hosts towards consciousness. And the climax of that was this moment when Dolores realized that the voice inside her head all along was not Arnold, it was her. It was herself. And that's how she achieves consciousness, by being in conversation with a version of herself. And now William, in the Inner Journeys Recovery Center, which sounds like a maze, sort of, he has traveled to the center of the maze, and he is talking to versions of himself, just like Dolores did. And so I think this is about William achieving consciousness. But of course, the wrinkle there is that in the next scene, William starts slaughtering his own past selves. He just starts wailing on them, and even poor Jimmy Simpson gets murdered. So what does that mean? Like previously, William said, "Oh, I know what my purpose is. I'm the good guy." And after he said, "I'm the good guy," he started killing himself. So this is again like another expression of self-destruction from William. He's constantly, like, since season 2, been trying to destroy himself, because he seems to see destroying himself as proving that he has control. If he can destroy himself, then it shows that no one else is in charge of his fate. And he also has said before that, the world is better off without me. Like, he knows that he knows that he's a piece of shit. He knows that he's not a good person, even though he sort of he sort of says the contrary at one point in this episode. But the point is that, like, William tries to destroy himself. And so it's interesting that, like, consciousness for William means, like, self-destruction here, which I think is part of that whole sort of misanthropic vibe that Westworld has. Westworld has a dim view of humanity, right? So, like, while the conscious hosts grow and spread and thrive and prosper, the conscious humans destroy themselves, which I think might be implying that human nature is bad, and therefore to be a conscious human is to want to limit your negative influence on the world, maybe, by self-destroying or something. I don't know. That's one interpretation. Thank you, Knowledge, who says, any chance you'll do a revisit of Season 1 after Season 3 ends? Watching another YouTube video of Ford dialogue, he mentions to Hale, given your level of insight when watching Q&Aing Clementine. Yeah, so there was a line in Season 1 where Ford refers to Charlotte's insight. So you got to wonder if in Season 1 they were already planning to have the Insight Company in Season 3. That would be surprising, honestly. I kind of doubt that that's deliberate, but it's possible. I don't know. So would we do a retrospective episode? Maybe. I don't know if there are enough connections to be worth like an entire video about it, but what we might do, like, we'll do a season we'll do an episode 6 video, episode 7, episode 8 video, and then I guess maybe we could do like a big wrap up video if people are interested. We'll see how we go. We'll see how much there is to say. Lumix says, "How did Arnold and Stubbs find William?" So yeah, at the end, Stubbs and Bernard come and find William. So last episode, Martin showed Bernard the facility where William is, and we know that they were tracking William from the thingy that Charlotte put in William's skin before sending him to the asylum. This moment here. So we did speculate that might have been like a tracker that Charlotte was implanting in William, and that indeed is what it was. So that's how Bernard and Stubbs found William, was through that tracker. It was mentioned in the episode as like an aberrant protein or something when they were like scanning his blood at the facility. So that must have been the tracker, like a biological tracker or something that was put into his bloodstream. Thanks, Connor Kraft, who says there were 3 hosts being printed when Charlotte destroyed Hector. Who do you think the other host is, other than Maeve? So yeah, so I think that was Serac printing. That was Serac printing Maeve so that Maeve could go and kill Dolores. And I suppose he's also printing Maeve's allies. So one of them was meant to be Hector, and the other one, I suppose, Armistice, is the most likely possibility. So if there were 3 hosts being printed, I would guess that it's Maeve, Hector, and Armistice, since they were her allies before. The real Zam in the chat suggests that Sizemore might be the 3rd host. I don't know if they even can print a human host like that, though, because like James Delos kept breaking down, and he was a human in a host. So I doubt it's Sizemore. I'm honestly surprised we saw Sizemore again, but anyway. Okay, so what else happened? So Maeve woke up in paradise. Oh, yeah, Clementine is another possibility that people are putting out there. So Maeve was in paradise, and that was Serac saying like, "Hey, it's possible to have paradise for you guys." And yeah, so this isn't real. So this is like multiple levels of fake, because this isn't even the real simulated heaven. This is a simulated heaven, because Serac does not yet have the key to get into the real Sublime, which is where Maeve's daughter is and stuff. So the goal is still to get the encryption key out of Dolores's head. So they talk about like what's unique about the hosts is their memory. And they've always talked about how like memory is a critical step towards consciousness. Being able to remember your past is essential to being conscious. And the fact that the hosts have more memory, since they have like photographic memory of everything that happened to them, I suppose that makes them more capable, more able to be conscious than humans are. I wonder if it might be possible to just like create the Sublime and create Maeve's daughter from Maeve's memory. Because like Dolores created this Bernard from her memories, so why can't Maeve create her daughter from memories, right? Like, I think there's many problems like that in Westworld. Like, once they introduce that kind of a concept, like if you can just create someone from memories, then why can't Dolores or Maeve just bring back whoever they want? Thank you to Jack S, who says, was William's turn to the good side planned by Serac with the drip, or was this mostly self-guided by William and not meant to happen? Yeah, so it's hard to tell what the intentions of Serac are here, because this mostly seemed with William to be like a legit sort of, journey of self-discovery, as he has been going through for a while now. And I wonder, like, if this is one of Serac's re-education facilities, what is Serac's goal here? What is Serac trying to achieve? Like, I thought Serac's goal here was to make people more controllable and to, stamp out these anomalies and stamp out these outliers from his plan. And yet, he seems to just be allowing William to just sort of trip out and learn about himself. So I'm not sure how that actually benefits Serac. We might learn more next episode when we get a sort of a Caleb episode. A couple of people ask about the maze that we saw people graffitiing when everyone went nuts because of the insight data going out, which was when Charlotte and her family were walking around in the real world. I think that was towards the end of the episode. when we saw that graffiti going up. I'm trying to find the picture of it, but I'm not sure where in the episode it was. We have seen the maze being graffitied before in one of the trailers. So it looks like that's part of like protest against the insight data, is I think what's happening there. Where's that fucking picture? Well, yeah, here's a shot from a trailer. So I've seen like the maze as like a symbol of protest before. And I suppose this is people's way of saying that they don't like Insight controlling them and surveilling them and having all this information on them. The maze works as a symbol because it's like all this like data that's like around and entrapping human consciousness and like deciding where you can go, like walls limiting where you can move. I think the maze works as an analogy, but like it's also like doing sort of double duty as a symbol, because the maze used to be about gaining consciousness, but I guess it's also about entrapment in like a data surveillance system. I guess the idea is that once humans escape that like data insight system, then maybe they can achieve true freedom and true consciousness by escaping that system. And of course, that's part of the broader pattern of this show, exploring how humans are similar to hosts. We both are controlled and we both are limited. Yeah, so I think that's what the maze is about. Thanks for the super chat from Knowledge, who says, where is Ford in all of this? I don't think we're likely to see Ford again. I mean, I didn't expect to see Ford return in season 2, but he did anyway, so, you know, I might be wrong. Ford definitely set a lot of this stuff in motion. It was Ford's plan for Dolores and Maeve to escape the Westworld Park, and Ford wanted the hosts to become their own species, and Ford kind of was a misanthrope who wanted the human race to be replaced by humans. Ford had a dim view of humanity, like Arnold did in the end. So I don't think that Ford exists in, as a copied mind out there somewhere. I don't think Ford is going to like come back. It's possible. Maybe he'll be back in like a flashback or something, but I don't see Ford's fingerprints on what's happening right now. Thanks, Knowledge, who says... Oh, we already did that one. Okay. So... Oh, someone asked about the Sublime as well. Hold on. Someone said something... Ah, fuck it. Alright, so Maeve was in the Sublime, and Serac was like, yo, I can give you heaven or I can give you hell. And I think perhaps when Serac puts Maeve back in Warworld, that's kind of like representing the alternative to heaven. That's representing hell. So Serac is very much offering like the carrot and the stick. He's saying, if you help me kill Dolores, you can go to heaven with your daughter. And if you don't do what I want, I could just like put you into this like hellish Nazi Warworld nightmare for as long as I'd like. Although Maeve does have a lot of fun killing a whole bunch of Nazis. I thought it was kind of lame how, like Maeve in this conversation with Dolores was saying, oh, Dolores, it's really fucked up that you've like killed a bunch of hosts and stuff. It's really messed up that you're just murdering people all the time. When like 5 minutes ago, Maeve was like murdering these Nazi hosts in Warworld. And of course, like, they're just Nazis, they're just hosts. But like Maeve was just a host playing a role not that long ago. So it seems like hypocritical for Maeve to be killing these hosts, and not even because she has to. Like, she actually just like specifically walks out amongst the Nazis because like she wanted to have a fun time killing. She's doing it specifically for fun, which, I don't see how that's really in the interests of, that's not a very heroic thing to do. And then we go into all this William asylum stuff, and we get this fantastic speech by William where he's going on about humanity is a thin layer of bacteria on a ball of mud, and it's just this great speech, and it's very Ed Harris, and it's a lot of fun, and it feels very much like the sort of speeches that William was giving in the Westworld Park, except it really also just fits in perfectly in the context of an asylum as well. There's a hint of like irony to this scene, I think, because William's trying to be all badass, but he's in like he's wearing white in an asylum, and he sounds like a crazy person. Like when you change the context from like cool cowboy William with a gun, and you change that context into being in an asylum, it sort of sounds like a crazy person's rant, as opposed to like a cool gunman's rant in Westworld. So I thought this was really fun. Like, it's just like switching the context on what William is usually like. and it sort of continues his, you know, nihilistic, misanthropic vibe of being like humans ain't shit, and that's sort of as part of why he's got this self-destructive vibe going on. Thanks Gearhead, who says, I'd say Bernard was never a perfect copy of Arnold, and Dolores could recreate him because she was his original creator, with Arnold as a rough guide. Yeah, so Dolores recreated Bernard from her memories of both Bernard and Bernard was created from memories of Arnold, and yeah, they were never meant to be perfect. One of the cool things about the creation of Bernard is that they specifically tried to make Bernard to be like a faithful, accurate copy of Arnold, but then Bernard kept just committing suicide because that's what Arnold did. So the only way they could make a Bernard who was stable was by making Bernard different to Arnold, which is similar to the problem they had with the James Delos host, because the James Delos host kept on destroying himself because he just wasn't stable as a person, and like he was feeling horrible about what happened to his son Logan, and like James Delos was just couldn't hold it together. The same was true when they tried to recreate Arnold, and the only way that they could make a Bernard who lasted was by making Bernard different, an entirely new, an original creation, I think was the term that Ford used. So the only way to survive is to make something new, not just keeping on identically copying the old. And that reflects what's happening with the Doloreses. Like the reason why like Charlotte might survive in the long run, Charloris, is because she's not identical to Dolores, she's different. That's how we evolve, is by changing. Thanks Jesse, thanks poor man John Doe, who says, theory time. What if Dolores' plan is to allow the hosts in the Sublime to evolve even more as when they are online, time moves faster for them, and then bring them back at the appropriate time? Yeah, that's a good point. So they did introduce that idea in, what was it, Season 3, Episode 2, where inside a simulation, time moves faster. And they haven't really used that concept yet. Like, it was really just like a throwaway line in Season 3. And yeah, there certainly are possibilities for how that could work. Because, like, in the real world, there's, like, you know, evolutionary algorithms and stuff where we can get computers to learn things by running them through a system, a learning process over and over and over, and they gradually get better. So the Sublime, yeah, might well be, like, a cool testing ground to be able to teach people stuff. Like, even, you know, Maeve fighting these Nazis here. If you, like, ran this Nazi fighting simulation 1,000 times over in a day, then maybe Maeve could get really good at fighting Nazis or something, you know? So, that's not a bad theory. I don't know if we'll see it, but it's a neat idea. Thanks to Dwan William, who says, technically, Arnold made Dolores and Ford made Maeve. Yep. It's interesting how the two's personality reflects the worldview of their creator, with Arnold being the extremist and Ford being the escapist. That's interesting. I think towards the end, Ford sort of moved, like Ford was kind of in agreement with Arnold in the end. But I guess at the time that Ford created Maeve was earlier, and that was when, yeah, Ford was more optimistic and Ford was more about the importance of human stories, whereas Arnold was more depressive and Arnold was suicidal in the end, and Arnold was more extreme, yeah. So I guess that makes perfect sense that Dolores is a more extreme character who's more willing to destroy, whereas Maeve is more interested in human stories. Maeve is more compelled by the story of her daughter. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think Maeve does reflect the values of early Ford, and Dolores reflects the value of Arnold. That's a cool point. Thanks for the super chat from Kishan, who says, how are you taking screenshots? Just with the screenshot button, man. You can just like set up a hotkey and then get it to automatically save. You can Google up how to do it. Thanks for the super chat from Michael, who says, Ford is in episode 5 at the 14-minute mark. Listen to the music. They have used music cues for certain characters. I didn't hear Ford's music in this episode, but you might be right. We'll have to listen back to it. Because, yeah, they definitely do use music cues to, like, hint at what's going on. Thanks for the super chat from Andre, who says, do you think the second person resurrected is Teddy? I don't think we're gonna see Teddy again, because Teddy had such like an appropriate and an emotional ending at the end of season 2. I think it would sort of undercut Dolores' choice to leave him behind if she brings him back. I wouldn't rule out seeing him in some kind of like flashback or simulation or vision or, there's lots of different ways they could play with his character. But I don't know what role he would have, because all he ever was just sort of he was representative of Dolores's like humanity, for want of a better word. And she cut him off by saying that, well, my love for him is just making me weaker and more vulnerable, so I'm going to cut him away. I'm going to sacrifice my loving side for the sake of my survival. And, maybe, I guess it's possible that Dolores might have a turn. Maybe Dolores will decide that, well, actually, I think I do need to return to being more compassionate and loving, a bit like Maeve is. Maybe Dolores will end up in the Sublime in the end. Like, I think it's quite possible that Dolores will die at the end of this season, because she's such like a violent, destructive, revolutionary force. Whether she succeeds or fails, I could see her, going to heaven, going to the Sublime in the end, in some sense. So maybe she will return to Teddy in the end. Thanks to Marina, who says, Maeve fights Nazis to Neo's Matrix practice room. Yeah, it is a bit reminiscent of Matrix. There's a lot of like Matrix callbacks here. Like even the bit when Dolores destroys Hector's pearl while Hector is inside the simulation. That is really similar to what happens in The Matrix when one of the human characters gets unplugged by, what's his name, Cypher, or whoever the bad guy's name is, on the Nebuchadnezzar hollow ship while they're plugged into the Matrix. And it's this horrible emotional moment of like inside the simulation, they're like, oh God, please don't do it. And then they just like drop dead, which is just like what happened to Hector. I thought it would have been cool if I think it would have been cool if instead of like dropping dead like a corpse, if Hector just like flickered and just sort of like bugged out a little bit like the Serac holograms. Like it would be cool because like this is a digital simulation, right? This isn't a physical body. So it would have been cool if, I thought dropping dead like a corpse was like less interesting. But yeah, this definitely feels very Matrixy. Andre clarifies that he means that maybe Teddy is the person resurrected to help Maeve. That would be cool, actually. That's a cool idea because like if like maybe Serac would want to use a host who looks like Teddy to fight against Dolores, just as like mind games to freak out Dolores. I think that would work as well. Like, wouldn't it be horrible if you had to fight against your former lover? Even if it wasn't really them, if it just had their body. Or maybe they could reprogram Teddy. I mean, Teddy has been reprogrammed before, right? Dolores programmed a more violent, brutal Teddy. What if that more violent, brutal Teddy was turned against her and she had to fight it? That would be sort of poetically appropriate, having to fight the monster she made, like Frankenstein's monster, That would be cool. Thanks for the super chat from Agotil, who says, Lisa Joy called Charlotte Haloris, and I feel like she copied that from you. Now, they've been using the term Haloris for ages, and I've usually used the term Charloris just because, some people aren't aware that Hale is Charlotte's name. I think Charloris is maybe a little bit clearer, but yeah, Haloris is the more, official term. Thanks for the super chat from Brendan, who says, are Charloris, Bernard, and Maeve having the shared experience of losing a child, making them the human-host hybrid balance? Well, the Charloris, Bernard, and Maeve aren't human. I mean, Bernard seems to have aspects of Arnold in her, and Charlotte seems to have aspects of the human Charlotte in her. But it seems to be that both humans and hosts have this common idea of losing a family member, losing a child is the kind of tragedy that makes you human. That's something that they talked about a lot in season 1, was the idea of, your consciousness and your identity comes from trauma, like these cornerstone memories, just like how Caleb lost Francis. I guess an interesting counterpoint to that is William's flashbacks this episode. Because we had these interesting flashbacks where we had William as a kid. And at first, they have this, yelling father character. And at first it seemed like they were going to do sort of a stereotypical, my dad used to hit me and that's why I'm a bad person. But it turned out a bit differently because we find out that this young William was actually beating up other kids at school. He said, oh, someone teased me, so I broke their arm and knocked out 3 of their teeth. Holy shit, William was a violent piece of shit from a very young age. And yeah, maybe his father's like a bit drunk and like he like shakes William, like he doesn't seem like a good dad. But it doesn't seem like his dad's behavior is anywhere near enough to explain, let alone justify, William's violence. So it sort of it sort of seems like William was just sort of evil in his own right from a young age. Like he was really violent and horrible. So you got to wonder, like, if the logic is everyone's got to have like a traumatic experience to make them who they are, what was William's traumatic experience, you know? Maybe he was just born bad. So it's that sort of misanthropic idea of like, do we have a choice? Was William just born to be a violent, awful person all along? Did he have any choice? And I think that sort of, this whole self-destructive thing is his choice. He's trying to say, I choose to not be anymore, which is that misanthropic idea of humans being rubbish. John, thanks for the donation, who says, William kills his former selves because he realizes his past doesn't matter. Only what he does with the present matters. He is killing his past selves to free himself from the past. And that's when he says he is the good guy. Yeah, okay, that's a cool interpretation. So yeah, maybe the way he's freeing himself is not by, suicide. It's not by killing his present, it's just by killing his past and rejecting his past and therefore freeing himself to be something new in the future. That's a bit more of an optimistic interpretation of what William is doing. I'd like to see that. The question is, if William does, defeat his past selves, like Scott Pilgrim destroying Nega Scott, what is the future that he's going to build? What is the new William that's going to follow? I'm really not sure where William is going. It looks like Stubbs and Bernard rescue William from the facility. They must have some plan for him, which means like Dolores must have some plan for him because it was Martin who instructed Bernard to go here. So I'm really curious to see what role William has because, Dolores back in season 2 was I think pretty much agreeing with William that he's useless and evil and needs to be replaced by hosts. So what possible use does Dolores have for William? And my other question is why did Charlotte put William in the asylum in the first place if the Doloreses were just going to fetch him back from the asylum shortly afterwards? And further, what is the purpose of William's reprogramming treatment thing that's happening? I mean, is it going to be completed, or are Dolores or Bernard and Stubbs taking him out of there before it even happens? I wonder if maybe this whole thing of Stubbs and Bernard coming to save William, I wonder if that is maybe not real. I wonder if this is just part of the simulation. Because, people are constantly saying, oh, what if this is just Future World? What if this is just a simulation? What if this is just blah, blah? There actually haven't been all that many crazy twists this season with whoa, it was fake all along. Maybe this will be that. Maybe this interaction between Bernard and Stubbs and whatever happens next episode, maybe it'll be about, it's just inside William's treatment, inside William's simulation, and he'll actually be fine. What if William does some crazy shit for the next 2 episodes? There's only 2 episodes left, holy shit. What if William gets involved in some crazy stuff and then he thinks he saves the world, or he thinks that he turns into a better person, or he thinks he rejects his past, gets over his trauma, whatever, reunites with Emily, but then at the end he takes off his glasses and he realizes that none of it was real, it was all part of his treatment, and he's like, well, at least I'm a better person now. That would be fun. During the flashback, William read a book. Young kid William read a book, and thanks for the super chat from Mega Baltimore Ravens F, who says Young Will's book is referencing to the book Sir Rowan and the Camerian Conquest, and AR company called Sulon. Sir Rowan gets a second chance after betrayal. Ooh, that's cool. I'll see if I can find that shot with the book. Because Kid William was saying that, my only retreat was books when I was growing up because everything was horrible and I just read these books. And I'm not sure if I can find that shot, but it'd be interesting to look into what that book's about. If it's about getting a second chance after betrayal, then maybe William will get to turn over a new leaf and embrace some kind of future. It would be a kind of a hairpin turn if after all this time Williams actually finally starts becoming a better person, but that would be welcome. Thanks for the super chat from Jacob, who says Charloris losing Jake and Son reminded me of Grey Worm losing Missandei. Maybe charred Loris will be consumed with vengeance like Grey Worm. Yeah, so the question is like, where does Charlotte go from here? I'm not sure if I can even show crispy Charlotte. I'll just show like that. She's looking very, very Anakin chic, very, very Mustafa vibes going on here. This certainly seems like a time for change. This should certainly change Charlotte. It's just such a shame because she was getting so close to this sympathetic, loving human side, and yet it's what sort of destroys her and brings her down in the end. And it's also like so wonderfully ironic that this is how Serac found out that Charlotte was the host, because since Serac has all this data on Charlotte, he knows that Charlotte doesn't have that much of a loving relationship with her family. And so it's the very fact that Charloris was close and loving to her family, that's how Serac figured out that she was the host, which I think is cool. And it also shows, like, the capacity of hosts to change and grow in a way that humans tend not to. And yeah, then we had Charlotte like going all Terminator mode and like gunning down a bunch of these security guys. And yeah, it's just it's more in the endless parade of like faceless goons getting murdered, and the goons are just so bad at shooting with their stormtrooper aim and just hitting nothing. But Charlotte was pretty badass going like Terminator mode and gunning these folks down. So it was still fun. And we got this riot control robot in there, jumped into the fray, which was fun. I don't know what these soldiers thought they were doing by shooting that thing. I did they expect it to fall down? Surely the only move is to run away. It reminds me of that guy in like Game of Thrones who tries to kill Wun Wun the giant by like shooting him with a crossbow. It's so silly. It would be nice. Like I wish there were just like fewer security guards, and I wish they didn't have automatic guns. I wish they had just like little pistols or something, because then it would be a bit more believable that they miss everything. But anyway, Charlotte did take some hits and she was like limping pretty badly, so like it's not all free, but it was a bit ridiculous, I thought. So what else happened in this episode? So, we had this amazing scene where they started burning the hosts in cold storage. I thought this... I probably can't show that. I thought this was a really, really poignant scene where, like, we're just watching, like, the genocide of a species, and the unmoving people as they're burning was such a crazy image. It sort of reminds me, not to get too real, but that imagery of those like monks. I think they're like Tibetan monks who, out of protest, set themselves on fire. There's these like crazy historical photos of just burning men who are just sitting on the ground, looking like totally calm as they're burning to death. And that's sort of what I thought of when I saw all these cold storage hosts, the entire host species, the remainder of them, apart from Charlotte and Maeve and the Doloreses and Bernard, just getting burned to death, getting wiped out, which is so cold and horrible and clinical. This whole cold storage place has always been like a really interesting sort of underworld, always this dark, dank place full of these unmoving shades, and having them burned like this is so horrible. And it justifies Dolores' extreme measures to some extent, I think. Like the fact that Serac is absolutely willing to wipe out the host species. That justifies Dolores' extreme measures that she's taken for survival. If there's ever a time to fight and kill, it's to ensure the survival of your people, So I think that's why we have this scene here. And it was also, it was really cool the way Serac was describing, I've just bought this $1 trillion company and I'd like you to delete all of it. I'd like you to delete all of the IP, destroy it all. And I think that the reason why Serac does this is that, Westworld is where the hosts came out of, and the hosts have been causing a whole lot of trouble for him. So it makes sense for him to just wipe out Delos, wipe out the Westworld parks, make it all go, just so that everything stays simple and controllable for him and Rehoboam. I think that makes sense. Someone in the chat points out that the dog got left behind. Remember when when Charlotte just like stole that guy's dog a while ago? We don't know what happened to this doggo. That's sad. I wonder if Charlotte will go back and get the dog. I would actually love it if, like, you know, she lost the family but she got to keep the dog. That would be fun. So Serac successfully took over Delos. Despite all of Charlotte's efforts, she failed to secure Delos. But the whole reason why Dolores wanted... Oh yeah, people compare Charlotte to John Wick, because John Wick in the movie goes on a rampage after losing a dog. That would be cool. Anyway, so Serac successfully took over Delos, but the reason why the Dolori wanted Delos was so that they could have the IP and the technology to continue producing hosts. It seems as though Dolores can print hosts, but maybe she can't make more printers, and specifically maybe she can't print pearls, because she had to, like, smuggle those pearls out. So what Dolores really wanted is the host manufacturing data and technology, and it seems as though she does successfully upload that data. So, like, Charlotte copies it onto a drive or something, and then she tells Serac that I sent out the data. But then Serac, if I remember rightly, Serac says, "Oh, did you get the data out?" or something like that, which suggests to me that maybe she didn't actually manage to get the data out, which is, like, pretty important. Like, if she didn't get that data out, then they won't be able to create any more hosts. So that would be bad. Yeah, I just sent the last of the files we needed, and then Serac laughs and says, "Did you?" So maybe Charlotte failed to send out that data. And if they don't manage to send out that data, then the hosts are screwed, because they all just got burned. So that would be pretty dire. Unless Dolores is able to create the data from her memory or something. Alexandria in the chat says that one of the bodies being printed by Serac is Clementine because the host ID checks. So I believe there are, like, these alphanumeric numbers, these codes, these IDs associated with the different hosts that appear on some of the screens sometimes. So yeah, apparently Clementine might be one of these new hosts, which would be fun. Clementine was included in some of, like, the promotional stuff that happened for season 3. So it makes sense that she might appear again. I should be interesting to see who else appeared in that photo shoot, because that was was that the premiere? It was somewhere where they had these shoots of a bunch of the actors. They had Logan reappear, and we haven't seen him this season yet, so maybe we'll see Logan again. Saw Kid Cudi, Lena Waithe. We haven't seen Felix and Sylvester, apart from that very brief appearance in episode 2, so maybe we'll see these guys come back. These are the showrunners. Stubbs, Giggles. Yeah, maybe we will see Felix and Sylvester, because everyone else has appeared. Okay, so, but yeah, I think that's really significant. Like, did Charlotte manage to get the data out or not? I thought it was cool how Charlotte used this gas to, like, murder all these humans, except Serac didn't fall down because he was a hologram all along, which is smart. I don't know if I was the only one, but when people started coughing, that was a little triggering. There have been people wearing masks throughout this season. People have noticed. In a couple of the episodes, people out in public have been wearing face masks, which in the time of Corona is interesting. This season really is terribly topical, not only with the, masks and coughing, but with the whole, like, data technology stuff, which is very relevant right now. So, so Captain Nauseous in the chat points out that Major Craddock, the Confederado, appeared in the asylum to bring him to his therapy session. And I suppose that was, like, just part of his simulation. I suppose that was part of his, like a hallucination or something, even though he wasn't strapped into the chair at the time. This is Craddock here. Oh yeah, no, that was part of his hallucination. But they are sort of blurring like what's real and what's not. So I think this does encourage us to wonder if that Craddock wasn't real, then hey, maybe this Bernard and this Stubbs aren't real, who come and save William. I think we're doing some good old fashioned Westworld, what is real and what isn't sort of stuff. Thanks for the super chat from Adam, who says, I wish they had a Game of Thrones budget so that the riot control could have really fucked up effed some C's up on screen. That would have been... They could have done more with that. I mean, they specifically told us that they have 300 of these riot control machines, so I think we might see more of them. You don't mention 300 robots and only give us one, surely. But we never saw the elephants in Game of Thrones Season 8, so, who knows? We've been bit before. Thanks for the super chat from... trying to check if we missed any. Yeah, I think we got most of them. Alright, cool. So, yeah, William says, I finally understand my purpose. I'm the good guy. And then he starts murdering his past selves. I like how they had James Delos as, like, running the therapy session, because he's, like, a really important person to William personally. Like, we learned that, for whatever reason, William did not have a good relationship with his father. And I think James Delos was sort of a surrogate father to William in a lot of ways, for better or worse. He definitely seems to be someone who William admired. I mean, he's also someone who William exploited, because William was sort of like using his family in order to gain power and wealth and stuff. But I tend to think that William genuinely did respect James Delos, at least at the start, because I think that's why it sort of hurt William so much to see James Delos broken down. Apparently missed a super chat from Prachi, so I thought I had responded to that. Okay, so Prachi said, was it the maze being painted on the wall when Halores was rushing her son from school? Yes, it was. Does the last scene create a new cornerstone for Halores? Yeah, that's a cool way of looking at it. Because we were talking about how, so many of the characters, with the exception of William maybe, so many of the characters have this pattern of they suffered some kind of trauma and that became their cornerstone memory, and that sort of defines who they are as a person. So like Arnold lost Charlie, and then Bernard had the memory of losing Charlie, and Caleb lost Francis, and it's this like recurring pattern. And maybe this moment of like Charlotte losing her family, maybe that sort of crystallizes this new Charlotte identity. Maybe this just drives her even further into being her own person and rebelling against the Dolores Prime. I think that definitely could be going on. Thanks for the super chat from Hector, who says, hope Serac doesn't get a hold of the key, or he'll destroy Host Heaven like he did Delos's data and burn the hosts. Yeah, I think that is likely. I think Serac was very specifically wiping out the hosts this episode, and I think he'd be more than happy to wipe out the hosts in the Sublime, although that goes against what he's promising Maeve. Serac is promising Maeve that I'm going to put you in Host Heaven with your daughter if you help me destroy Dolores. So, can Serac be trusted? I suspect not. He's playing such like a devil's bargain sort of a thing. This season, it's like a Faustian pact sort of thing. When you make a deal with the devil like this, it never goes well. So I don't think Serac will give Maeve the heaven that he's promising. But I also don't think that Maeve will do what Serac wants. I don't think Maeve will kill Dolores. Because like Maeve's whole story has been about like, achieving freedom and liberation, and that's why it's so crazy that this season is, she's under Serac's control. It's such a horrible thing to happen to her after she was enslaved in the Westworld parks for so long. So I tend to think she'll escape from him. I would like to see more frustration from her, like Maeve comes across as like so like ultra confident, cool, calm, and collected all the time. It would be cool to see a little bit more like anguish from her end about like how fucked up it is that she's controlled by Serac still, because that is such a horrible thing to happen to her. But, at least she gets to kill some Nazis. So we had that. We had the William monologue. And it's interesting, the whole, therapy stuff that was happening here was, fairly normal. Because, again, this is meant to be one of Sirach's re-education centers, right? Where he tries to reprogram people. Remember last episode when they showed us his brother, Jean-Mi, in this whole big facility where, all this weird stuff's happening, with all these people in, these glass cases and Sirach editing people. And, it sounded a lot more sinister and crazy than what we're seeing here. I mean, stuff does get a bit more crazy when they lock William into the White Room and they forcibly give William drugs, and they implanted a drip. They implanted the limbic tab system to give him drugs and stuff. So I guess they're working up to the really crazy stuff. I think that this has to be a hallucination. I reckon Bernard and Stubbs aren't actually here, because how can this be all there is to the re-education editing stuff? I think it has to go further. So I suspect that Bernard and Stubbs have not actually successfully rescued William yet. But I suppose it's also possible that they did, because they talked about how William's been left in here a long time because of all the chaos, because everyone's insight data has been released, and William's own therapist apparently just hanged herself because her partner found out that she was cheating, or that she would cheat, and took the kids away, so she killed herself. So we are still seeing the ripple effects of the release of the insight data, but I still think, and a lot of people still think, that the insight data stuff was kind of underwhelming last episode when they released everyone's information. I don't think they've shown us enough of exactly what it means for that data to be released, how that impacts people, what kind of data it was. We really only got a few brief shots of ooh, someone had Alzheimer's, and ooh, someone was projected to lose their kid. Which is horrible and all, but if they want us to really be compelled by how significant of a moment this is for the world, I think it needed more exploration. Thanks for the super chat from Adam, who says, I think the black and white thing was really obvious in the asylum. Some all black, some all white, and Bernard in black and white. Yeah, that's a good point, because all of these mental patients in the facility were all dressed in white, and all of the staff and all the handlers and stuff were wearing black, which is a nice reversal of, William normally being the man in black. And the fact that, Stubbs and Bernard are in a combination of both black and white is, very deliberate here, I think. So that suggests that they are not, part of that same dichotomy. They're a bit different. I mean, Arnold is sort of, he's both host and human in the sense that he's got Arnold's personality in him to some extent. So I suppose it makes sense that he's black and white. In any sense, they're sort of interlopers in this asylum system. Thanks for the donation from John, who says, it wouldn't make sense for Bernard and Stubbs to be fake. The only faction that knows Bernard and Stubbs are a team is Dolores, and we know that they don't have control of William because Charlotte locates him and reports his location. I don't think Bernard and Stubbs, if they're fake, are faked by Sirach. I think that if they're faked as a hallucination in William's mind. Just like Craddock, right? The fact that Craddock turns up, I don't think Craddock was programmed into William's hallucinations by Sirach in this facility. I think Craddock is just a expression of the turmoil and the memories and all the crazy stuff that's inside William's head. I think that's why Craddock appears, and maybe by the same logic, that's why Bernard and Stubbs appear. Or not that we know of any relationship between Stubbs and William. Yeah, look, I mean, I'm not saying it's likely. I mean, I guess Stubbs and Bernard might really be there and might really be rescuing William. I'm just floating the possibility that maybe they're not real. Thanks for the super chat from Lawrence, who says, writers pulling off a double entendre with Deus Ex Machina, God from the Machine, with how events seem to happen at right time out of nowhere. Yeah, so I mean, that's sort of, I mean, especially in Westworld Season 1, it was explicitly taking place in a world that was a story written to entertain, and it's playing with tropes of, the Western genre. And yeah, that's something that Westworld has continuously done. It's, played with the idea of, narratives within narratives and writing with, like Westworld is about creation in a lot of ways. it is a little bit of a pretentious thing from Jonah and Lisa, the showrunners. I think that they're sort of, it's not only a story that they're telling, they're sort of exploring the act of creation itself. And there are very many creator characters like, you know, Ford and Arnold and Serac and Liam Bloody Dempsey, who are all these sort of aggrandized, powerful, wise creator god figures. Because they are interested in that act of creation and all the little funny things that can happen when you're creating and when you're writing. And there was a line that I'm pretty sure Maeve had in Warworld, I think it was, where she said something about, oh, that's a bit on the nose, like that's a bit, you know. So they were sort of mocking the writing inside the writing. So they are constantly doing this sort of like self-aware fourth wall stuff throughout the series. And the Deus Ex Machina of like Stubbs and Bernard conveniently turning up at the right time is very appropriate. And they have been even more like explicit with that stuff, with like Ford turning up in season 2 was very much like a Deus Ex Machina. So yeah, they're definitely doing that. Thanks for the super chat from Southern Bell Reviews, who says, I guess Halorus's boyfriend, whose name is Jake, should have read what would happen to them in the future. If he had, he would have known they would blow up. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point. I mean, I don't suppose Jake's profile would include the fact that he was about to get blown up, because I don't expect that was like Rehoboam's long-term plan. But I guess if it is that Serac blew the car up, then if it was part of Serac's plan, then maybe it would be in the data. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it was cool how Jake didn't read the data, because that's like maybe that's a way of freeing yourself from the prediction, or maybe that's just a way of giving yourself over to the prediction. Because what I thought was interesting about Ash last episode was that Ash was told by Liam Dempsey that, hey, you're just going to like rob me and leave me. But Ash was like, nah, I don't want to do that. So instead she shot him and didn't rob him. And that, I think, was Ash. And then Ash says, guess I do have a choice. So that explicitly was about Ash deviated from the plan once she knew what the plan was, you know? And like Caleb was projected to commit suicide, but now that he knows that projection, maybe he won't do it. So like sometimes knowing the prediction allows you to not follow the prediction. So like it seems like a cool like rebellious thing for Jake to have not read the data. But I wonder if not reading the data just makes you more susceptible to do what the data wants. So it sort of gets into this weird sort of, you know, game theory thing of like, is it good to be aware or not? Leo says, is this a Serac facility? Wouldn't Charlotte/Dolores put William in a place not controlled by their enemy? Yeah, I mean, that's what we were talking about before. I don't see the logic of Dolores putting, or Charlotte putting William in the asylum if they just want to get him out again. But we do know explicitly that the Inner Journeys Recovery Center is one of Serac's facilities. This is the place where William goes, the Inner Journeys Recovery Center. So it is one of Serac's places, and it is really curious that Charlotte would put him there. Thanks for the super chat from Darkside, who says, when they took William's blood sample, it read unknown protein detected, synthetic markers found. Then it read warning data breach, tracing data transmission. Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot about that. So the unknown protein, the synthetic markers, so that is when Charlotte injected William with a tracker last episode, and that's how they know where William is and stuff. That makes sense. But yeah, there was also this data transmission, data breach thing that happened. And yeah, I think that's significant. I think that means that Charlotte not only injected William with a tracker, but I think Charlotte injected William with some kind of a digital computer virus that like got into the facility's system when they tested William's blood. So I wonder if, I mean, it could be as simple as like that helped William and that helped Bernard and Stubbs get inside the facility, maybe. But I wonder if it might be more of that. I wonder if like this whole idea of this experience being fake, you know, maybe it's possible that, I mean, we know that William is on a digital drug right now, right? Like they gave William a drip. They gave William a limbic tab drug system against his consent, which is a pretty fucked up thing to do. He's on a digital drug, and a digital virus from Dolores apparently just like hacked into the facility system. So I wonder if it might be possible for Dolores to remotely control William's drug. Because like they were saying in this episode, like, oh, let's put him on Desert Oasis for an hour or whatever. So like they're showing the degree of like the different flavors of control and mind altering experiences that they can give William while he's on this drug. I wonder if Dolores could remotely control William's experiences and maybe give him hallucinations of stuff like this while he's in control. Again, I don't think this is like likely, you know? I mean, this is just speculation. But it would be cool, wouldn't it? If that was what was going on. I also think it's hilarious that this guy just like willingly puts his fingers in William's mouth when he's giving him a pill. Like, if you're going to strap someone down like that, you're not going to put your fingers in his mouth. Like, Jesus Christ. Because, yeah, William, like, bites off a bit of finger at this point. It's crazy. Oh, and yeah, so this is the book that young William was reading. Sir Rowan and the Lady of Ceylon. When Briley heard her say so, she was sore abashed, for much she loved Sir Rowan, and full well she knew the cruelness of her mother. Anon the queen went unto her own chamber and sought her coffer, and there she took out the piece of the sword that was pulled out of Sir Logan's head. Oh, Jesus. Sir Logan as well. Logan as in Logan Delos, right? Then she ran with that piece of iron to the sword that lay upon the bed, and when she put that piece unto the sword, it was as meet as it could be when new broken. The queen now gripped that sword in her hand fiercely, and with all her might she ran straight to where she knew Rowan was, and there she would have thrust him through, had not a knight pulled the sword from her. Then when she was lettered of her evil will, she ran to King Kay, and told him on her knees what traitor he had in his house. The king was right heavy thereof, but charged the queen to leave him to deal with the knight. He went straight into the chamber unto Sir Rowan, and then he found... Yeah, well, someone in a super chat said that this was about someone getting a second chance after a betrayal, so I wonder if that's what's going to happen to William, getting a second chance after all the terrible things he's done, like murdering his daughter. We'll have to check out what this book's about. Okay, so that's all interesting. Yeah, if you do want to hear readings, there is a channel called Alt-Shift XXX where you can literally just like listen to me read stuff. I can chuck it in the chat. There it is. youtube.com/AltShiftZZZ if you can. Okay, so William's biting off some fingers, having a good time, and I love how Serac rolls up with like this army of goons in black. I like how Serac is like taking this seriously. I like how Serac is being smart. Someone asks, is Charlotte dead? I don't think Charlotte is dead. Charloris rather. Because, you know, they had her crawl out and look emotionally at the wreckage because this is changing Charlotte. And, you know, she stood up at the end. So I think Charlotte is definitely still alive. And, you know, they could always just reprint her body. Like, I don't think she's going to use this body again. I suppose she'll get picked up by Dolores, and then Dolores will print a new body for her, and they can go on. But I wonder how she'll be changed after this experience. Did I say Alt-Shift XXX instead of Alt-Shift ZZZ? Because that is an entirely different channel. It's Alt-Shift ZZZ that I was talking about. Anyway, so... Okay, what else happened? I feel like not all that much happened this episode, to be honest. Like, it was all interesting stuff. Like, it was cool having William's sort of introspective stuff, and it was cool having this conversation between Maeve and Dolores. I mean, these are sort of like these are like opposite circumstances to the last time that Dolores and Maeve spoke. Because last time they spoke, Maeve was all fucked up. Maeve was... It was this moment here. Maeve had just been gunned down, and the conversation they had was like Dolores saying, oh, you know, the reason why you're gunned down and the reason why you're defeated here is because you were attached to your daughter. Whereas Dolores changed Teddy and sort of detached from her love for Teddy. and that's why Dolores survived. So it was this really sort of cynical moment of Dolores saying, you've got to be brutal to survive, because Maeve was the vulnerable one here. But the situation's very different in this episode, because Maeve, I mean, they're both in a simulation, they're both under Sirac's control. But Martin Loris here, if we can call him, her, Martin Loris, is the more sort of vulnerable person, because, you know, Maeve is in control of this simulation, she says. So it's sort of a reversal of the power dynamic. You know, Maeve is in control over Dolores here. But their conversation sort of amounts to just saying that it's sort of unfortunate that they're on opposite sides, but they're just going to keep on fighting each other. And that's why at the same time, Charloris comes along and destroys Hector and tries to destroy Maeve as well. Yeah, so these are these host IDs, these number codes, and someone in the chat said that one of these is Clementine. And the other one, I suppose, must have been Hector, because that's why, like, Hector's brain was there. So Maeve's being printed, apparently Clementine's being printed, and Hector was sadly destroyed. And this brain is, this is Martin Loris, who was recovered from the explosion last episode and was now in conversation with Maeve. Okay, all right. What other burning questions have you all got? I think we might wrap this up soonish. So then we'll jump into starting making this video. People are talking about William's fingers. So yeah, William's fingers were blown off in season 2, episode 10. Because Dolores gave him a gun that was like misloaded. It was like messed up, so it would blow up in his hand and blow off 2 of his fingers. And we see William's fingers missing in this new episode. I would have thought that they'd be able to heal William's fingers, just like regrow the fingers, especially for like a rich guy like William. Like, they did show us previously that, you know, poorer people are still not able to access enough medical care in this world, with Caleb's mother not getting the treatment that she needs, it seems. But I would have thought that at least a rich person like William would have been able to regrow some fingers, because Ford in season 1 was talking about how, we can cure any medical problem, and perhaps one day we will resurrect the dead. He like explicitly says we can cure any medical condition. So it seems weird to me that they're not able to, you know, get fingers back. But yeah, the point is that inside the simulation, William does have his fingers back, apparently. Let me see if I can find a shot of that. I mean, certainly the younger versions do. I like how they brought back Jimmy Simpson. Jimmy Simpson didn't really do much this episode, apart from getting hit with a chair by Ed Harris. But that's as worthy a reason to bring back the McPoyle as any, I think. But yeah, when does William have his fingers and when does he not? Because if William still had his fingers in this shot, it would be a dead giveaway that this is some kind of hallucination still. Maybe that could be a tell. It's a bit like in season 2, like sometimes Bernard had a scar on him and sometimes he didn't. Does William have his fingers? It's on his right hand that they're missing? I don't know, we'll check it out later. Thank you, Darth Bull, who says, they say the way to tell a Dolores is a glitch when tested. Since we don't know the 5th Dolores, William, when tested, showed the same glitch. Maybe William is a Dolores now. So like a fidelity test, you're saying? So are they like fidelity testing whether this is the real William? I think the other difficult question with how William's story fits in is that, you know, we saw at the end of season 2, episode 10, that William was trapped in this simulation that the showrunner said was in the far future. And like this host version of Emily was like tormenting William and testing him, doing a fidelity test. And the purpose of that test, I think, is whether or not William is capable of deviating from who he is. It's about like, is William able to not kill his daughter Emily as he did in season 2? So apparently he's repeating his entire season 2 storyline over and over in some kind of artificial simulated form to see if William can ever change. And I wonder if what he's going to go through this season is going to like end him up in this situation. I suppose that they've got William's data in the forge, or they've got William's data somewhere, so that he'll end up in this loop regardless, because this is like, you know, a host copy of William, I suppose. But I wonder if the season 3 ending will connect to this season 2 ending in any way, or if William will manage to change. Because like William's goal for a while was trying to destroy the forge and trying to stop this whole loop that he's trapped in, but he must fail if this far future flashback happened. So if William's arc this season is about him changing and becoming someone better, it doesn't seem to affect this hell that the copy of him ends up in, sadly. Okay. Sean in the chat says that William wants to be tethered to reality, which is why he finally confesses. Totally makes sense why he wouldn't want synthetic fingers. Well, yeah, it makes sense that William wouldn't want the drip drug thing, because like William's whole thing in like season 1 especially was about like ironically, the reason why he's obsessed with being in like the fantasy of the Westworld Park is because he finds that in that fantasy is the only place where people can be real. Since there aren't consequences, that allows people to express themselves fully. And yet he still wanted consequences, the possibility of death, so that he could experience, so that it could be even more real, because there's actually something to lose. There's actually something to gain, life and death. But I mean, having synthetic fingers, would that really... I mean, you could grow biologically fingers in the year 2058, couldn't you? Surely. Thomas says, where was William's data stored? The forge? Yeah, I mean, I think it would be stored in the forge because, as Emily explained to William in season 2, the hats that everyone wears have these like brain scanner fMRIs in them, and that's what's recording all the data in the forge. I mean, the forge was... Dolores tried to destroy the forge in season 2, but I don't think it actually was totally destroyed. Like, she started flooding it, but then Bernard turned that off. So I think the forge data is now in, like, the satellite with the Sublime or something, because that's what Serac talks about this season with, like, he needs the key to get to the forge. It's pretty ambiguous what exactly is going on with the forge data right now. But, like, even if the forge data is totally destroyed, I suspect that this, like, far future loop of William might still be created from someone's memory, possibly. Like, Dolores could create this William, maybe, from a memory. Like, the fact that Dolores can create people from a memory allows her to do all sorts of stuff. Yeah, alright. Thanks for the super chat from Whimsical, who says, can't believe they killed a kid on TV, but keep up the good work. Yeah, well, they didn't show it. I mean, that's sort of the traditional way to do it, I think. I keep comparing it to, like, Star Wars. Like, remember when the younglings died in the prequels? They showed us that, which was pretty crazy. Wasn't like Star Wars 3 like PG? I don't know how they had dead younglings in a kids movie, but that happened. Melina in the chat says, "Where is Sato?" Yeah, that's a good question. So Sato is the name of the Yakuza dude who Musashi is pretending to be, or the character he's created, and we don't know what he's up to. It's interesting that last episode they said that there was communication from Jakarta. Like, they said that there was encrypted communication between Jakarta, Berlin, LA, and San Fran. And we know that LA is Dolores and Martin, and San Fran is Charlotte, and Berlin is a mystery, but Jakarta, like, I guess is Musashi. So what is Musashi doing in Jakarta? Or was that just, like, I don't know, like a relay of where the data was going through or something? I do wonder what Musashi's up to, because, like, we saw that Musashi had all of this milk stuff that's being used to make hosts. So that fits in with Dolores' plan of, like, she's trying to get, like, the technology out of the Delos company so that she can keep manufacturing hosts, and I guess she needs this milk as well to make the hosts. But the question is, does she have that data and that technology now? In Germany, meanwhile, she presumably has, I guess she has her fifth host, her fifth copy, well, her fourth copy, because Bernard isn't a copy. But yeah, but Berlin is a mystery. I'm curious to see what is in Berlin, if anything. Do we want to talk about the promo? Let's talk about the in the next episode bit. If you don't want to hear about the in the next episode promo, then close your eye holes. But this is what they showed on the next Westworld. So we saw Caleb in his armor uniform. We saw him taking a whole bunch of these limbic tabs, which is really interesting. I wonder what tabs he was taking and why. We know that Caleb deactivated his limbic tabs later on, so I wonder if he like I don't know, was he addicted? Was he overusing them? Was he using them to calm himself, as we've seen other people doing, or was he taking like uppers because he was like a soldier and he was taking like future meth to like, you know, kill civilians better or something? Like, what the fuck was going on with these drugs? Where was he? What was he doing in the army? There was like a robotic voice reading out his name. I wonder where this is. This looks fucked up. Caleb's injured. And we saw him wearing this mask again. So someone in the comments pointed out something really smart. So we talked about Argos in the last video. So like in season 2, they mentioned that an early name for the Westworld company was the Argos Initiative. And in Greek mythology, Argos was a giant who had many eyes, Argos Panoptes. And I think that definitely connects to this mask that Caleb is wearing that has all these eyes on it. He looks like Argos himself. And the idea of like being many-eyed connects to Insight as well, of course, and Rehoboam, because it's like this all-watching surveillance technology. So, you know, my first thought was like maybe Caleb and Francis were actually part of some protest or terrorist organization that was fighting against Insight and Rehoboam. But I guess it's more likely that he was maybe used by Insight and Rehoboam if it's the case that he was, you know, re-educated in one of their facilities. Maybe he was a tool of Insight and Rehoboam. I think that would make sense. But yeah, we'll have to wait till next week to find out exactly what was going on. We also saw Maeve doing some sick flips here, I think. And Bernard, we see Bernard in like the William facility. So I guess he does rescue William, if that is indeed real. And then Dolores tells Caleb to lead. So I wonder if like the future for Caleb as a character, if he's able to like get past whatever crazy stuff happened in his past, I wonder if, you know, Dolores's role for Caleb, is to, you know, lead the human species and be like a good human who like helps them. Oh, someone in the chat said something smart. Someone in the chat said that the reason why Caleb wears this mask is to defeat facial recognition. I think that's a cool theory. Because like in the real world, like facial recognition technology is getting better and better. And people use different ways of trying to get around it. And one of the ways is by wearing a mask that has facial features on it, because wearing a mask is not enough. There's now facial recognition technology that can accurately recognize your face, even if you're covering it with a mask. So maybe wearing a mask that has eyes and facial features on it is a way of messing with the mask and hiding your identity. And the question is, like, if Caleb is, you know, reprogrammed by Insight and working for the military, why would he need to hide his face? Why would he need to evade facial recognition if he's working for the system? So this does suggest to me that he's working against the system in some capacity. So maybe he was working with the army, but he like turned against and did something different. It'll be really interesting to find out what. Thanks for the super chat from Gregory, who says, what are the chances that Dolores blew up Hale's car? Yeah, I think it's a very real possibility, because Dolores does not want Charlotte to feel connected to her family, because when Charlotte is connected to the humans, that means she's not totally loyal to the hosts and the new host species that Dolores wants to create. So I think it is a possibility that this guy who's apparently responsible for the explosion, maybe he maybe he was working for Dolores and not for Serac. I think that is a possibility. That he could just be some Rico guy or something. And, we did see Dolores blow up a bunch of cars last episode, I'll remind you. Like, in the car chase, she used, like, explosives on the motorbike, and she used, like, the homing rockets, and, like, Martin Lawrence blew himself up. So it could well be another one of those explosives that Dolores maybe used to kill Charlotte's family. Although, like, I'm not sure that Dolores would have wanted to blow up Charlotte as well. I don't see how that's in her interests, so I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out. I think either way, like, we will see more divergence from between Charlotte and Dolores because what else is the point of introducing her as a character? Like, that was so much of the focus of season 3, episode 3, was seeing all the ways in which Dolores and Charlotte diverge and change. Like, we had Charlotte rebelling against Dolores like a teenage child, and we had her coming into her own, "You are my sunshine," stealing a dog. Like, that was all about her becoming her own person. So I could easily see Dolores dying this season, but Charlotte living on. I think that would make sense. Dave WBK says, have you seen Dark on Netflix? Wondering if you would maybe do some videos on it. I have seen Dark. I think Dark is really cool. Dark is a German time travel sci-fi drama type thing. A lot of people describe Dark as being like Stranger Things, but with adults. It's like, it's got a similar vibe of like mysteries and disappearing people, and like things get a bit supernatural. Except Dark has a lot more sort of like, it's focused more on like human drama and like older characters, and it's a lot more grounded. It's not as like sort of cute as Stranger Things is. It's not as like funny and colorful as Stranger Things is. It's a bit more grounded and real, and it's set in this lovely German town in the woods. So yeah, I like Dark a lot. We did have a survey of patrons recently, and Dark was like one of the less popular shows. So I think it's probably unlikely that we'll do a Dark video, just because there are so many other shows that are also cool and which are a bunch more popular. So I got me list somewhere, but we're looking at... Hold on, let me pull up the thing. There's a whole bunch of different shows that we may cover in the future. I mean, I'd like to talk about Dune, because like the Dune movie is coming out soon. So we might do a Dune video or two, like maybe one Dune video before the movie and one after. Witcher is enormously popular. I haven't seen Witcher or Red Witcher yet, but it seems like it's worth checking out. A lot of people are talking about Devs. Devs is by Alex Garland, who made like Ex Machina, and Devs is a TV show running now that is about a lot of the same themes as Westworld. I haven't seen Devs yet, but people say it's really great and an interesting comparison to Westworld. So once Westworld's over, I'll watch Devs, and maybe we'll talk about it on the channel. The Expanse, we've made a few Expanse videos, and season 5 should be coming out at some point. They haven't had a release date, but maybe we'll do an Expanse video before the new season. His Dark Materials, season 2 is coming at some point. So I'd like to do a His Dark Materials video. We almost did a His Dark Materials video before season 1. Didn't have time for it because of other stuff, but it would be cool to do a His Dark Materials video. It could probably be like an analysis of the first book and the first season. So yeah, Dune, His Dark Materials, Expanse, maybe Witcher, maybe Devs, and The Stand. Do you guys know The Stand? The Stand is like this massive doorstopper Stephen King book. It's about plague of all things, and the end of the world and stuff. I haven't read it, but I know a bit about it, and it sounds amazing. I also wanted to do like The Dark Tower. Like, for a while they were working on a Dark Tower TV show. Dark Tower is like this epic, strange, dark fantasy sort of thing by Stephen King. Unfortunately, the Dark Tower movie was a piece of shit, and they cancelled the TV show. So I think it's unlikely that we'll do The Dark Tower anytime soon. But they are doing a mini-series of The Stand, so that would be cool. A lot of people are talking about Mr. Robot. I haven't seen Mr. Robot. Apparently it's about a hacker man, and apparently it's really good. It's like 5 seasons long or something. I haven't seen Mr. Robot, and the fact that the Mr. Robot is over I think it's unlikely, honestly, that we'll do a video about it since, it's just not super relevant right now that it's over. But I'm still open to checking it out. Um, Wheel of Time is coming. Like, if we look more in the long run, like 2021 is going to be a pretty insane year for television because there's the Amazon Lord of the Rings series, there's the Amazon Wheel of Time series, there's Foundation. Apple is making a Foundation series. Foundation is like this amazing, epic, visionary Isaac Asimov series, which is also very relevant to like all this Westworld stuff about Rehoboam and stuff. So I'd love to talk about Foundation. The Hitchhiker's Guide, they're making a TV show of The Hitchhiker's Guide. Also Discworld. I think this year there's a Discworld BBC series. It seems to be a sort of like creative interpretation, like sort of an inspired by Discworld thing as opposed to like a faithful adaptation. But that might be worth a look. And also Sandman. Netflix is making a adaptation of Sandman, which is Neil Gaiman's trippy, mythological, cool graphic novel series. Why the Last Man is a really interesting graphic novel series about a plague that wipes out all men except for one. So the world is all women and this one guy with a monkey. And it seems to have been in development hell like forever. So I don't know if that series will happen, but that's kind of interesting. And yeah, as people are saying, like a lot of the series currently in production were put on hold by the coronavirus. So, who knows when and if these things will come out. It's always uncertain. Like, you don't believe that it's coming out until it's got a release date. And even then you can be suspicious. But, I mean, that's the stuff we're looking at. So next few weeks, we'll do the rest of Westworld Season 3. And of course, we'll also be doing more Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones videos. We just did that Euron video. We did that Pink Letter video. They were both a good time. So we're going to hold another Patreon vote to choose a topic from the Game of Thrones books. So that'll be cool. And yeah. And of course, there's House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones spin-off show. And who knows when that's coming and who knows if it'll be good, but we will, we'll have a look. And maybe there'll even be the Winds of Winter, who knows? Maybe that'll come out. Good Omens. Yeah, that was a Pratchett, thing. Was Gaiman involved in that? But yeah, that was another show. Black Mirror is also great. I wonder when Black Mirror is coming. But yeah, that's what we're thinking about right now. What are you guys saying in the chat? What are other shows? Tell me some other shows that I should check out. I feel like those are like the obvious ones because there's got to be something that's like popular enough that people will watch it and actually like good enough and complex enough to be worth making videos about. People are saying Better Call Saul is really good. It'd be cool to do like a Breaking Bad analysis. Someone wants a video about Lady Stoneheart. That'd be cool. Lock and Key. I haven't seen Lock and Key, but I've heard good things about it. It's like a fantasy graphic novel thing on Netflix. That looks fun. I think I'll watch like the start of it, check it out. Handmaid's Tale. As if we need another dystopian, depressing show to watch. Like, after Westworld and Game of Thrones, like, Jesus Christ. But it's meant to be good. Ozark. Yeah, Ozark is interesting. The OA. I really loved the OA. I thought the OA was really creative and interesting and trippy and artsy, and I enjoyed it. But it got cancelled, and it's also, like, pretty unpopular. So I don't know. I'd still like to do an OA video, but I don't think it's likely anytime soon. Mark in the super chat says American Gods. Yeah, American Gods is a really cool book. I didn't really care for what I saw of the show, but I'm willing to check that out. Like, there's a third season coming for American Gods, isn't there? So, yeah, we could maybe do an American Gods show. Preacher, Killing Eve. Someone says Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I think the complexity and history of that drama might be too much for an Alt-Shift-X video. I don't know if the Kardashian, if House Kardashian, is within my capabilities of analysis. Aren't there also like a zillion seasons of Keeping Up with the Kardashians? I don't know, man. The Boys is pretty cool. That's based on a comic. It might be interesting to like make a video comparing like The Boys show to the comic. We haven't done a lot of those sorts of videos about like comparing adaptations. I always had a soft spot for Scott Pilgrim. It might be fun to do like a Scott Pilgrim comic versus the movie video. Like, I'm sure other people have done that on YouTube, but like, there's some really interesting storylines in the Scott Pilgrim comic that wasn't in the movie that I thought might be fun to talk about. Charles says that you should do Lost. Yeah, look, I've only seen the first like 2.5 seasons of Lost, which everyone says are the only good seasons of Lost. So like I do love the first couple of seasons of Lost, but I don't know if it's a good idea to invest in it given what people say about the final seasons. I do know that Joanna Robinson is doing a podcast about Lost. Joanna Robinson does like some really great Westworld podcasts called Decoding Westworld and Still Watching Westworld, which are both really good. So I assume that her Lost podcast is also really good. It's called The Storm if you want to check that out. Watchmen. We already did a couple of Watchmen videos. Person of Interest. Yeah, so there is a show called Person of Interest that was made by Jonathan Nolan, one of the showrunners of Westworld. And Person of Interest is about a lot of the same stuff as Westworld. It's got like a giant computer that predicts everything, and they go out and prevent crimes and stuff. And one of the actors in Person of Interest is in this season of Game of Thrones. It's this guy, who's called Whitman in Westworld. So it's a very, very self-aware connection between Person of Interest and Westworld. The problem with Person of Interest is that it's 5 seasons long, and I can't be bothered watching that entire thing just to slightly get more context for Westworld. So I'll take everyone's word for it that it's related. People are talking about Kingdom. Apparently, Kingdom is like is it Japanese? It's about like some like feudal medieval conflict somewhere, which looks cool, but I have not seen it yet. Oh, was Lisa Joy also on Person of Interest? Man, they really have specific interests, don't they? There's Korean, yeah, Kingdom is Korean. There is another show that Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy are working on, which is a William Gibson novel, I think. William Gibson did like Snow Crash and a bunch of like sci-fi classics, and apparently Nolan and Joy are now getting into another sci-fi adaptation with some similar themes. So that could be fun. All right, we're going to wrap this up now. Thank you so much for all participating. If you want to watch these live streams, you can do so on the Patreon. But thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to everyone for getting involved. Sorry if I missed your super chat. We don't get them all. But thanks to everyone who donated. And we'll get this Westworld video out soon. So yeah, thanks for joining in. Have fun and practice social distancing. Cheers.